Maggie, I'm excited to see the answers to this icebreaker.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and launch it actually. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining. We've got a couple of initial icebreaker easy questions for you. Let me know if you can see them.
I can see it on my side.
Nice. So the first one is a Valentine's Day question, and then the second one is a quoting question. Feel free to answer as you join.
I think I know my answer for the first question.
I mean,
I
I
think
think it was a pretty obvious answer.
exactly. I think it has to be attending a Tune Webtoon and Neptune webinar.
Oh, it's performing better than I thought it would. We'll give everyone another minute or two to join and give us their feedback. It's neck and neck with a cozy home cooked meal.
Those are my top two choices as well.
A couple more responses. Mm. All right, well, it looks like a cozy home cooked meal. It's going back and forth between that and an Attune and Neptune webinar for a top Valentine's Day activity. And then for quoting Neptune flood before, it looks like about 70% of you have not and 30% of you have. So that's good to know. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this poll up and hand it over to Jean-Luc. Feel free to drop any questions you might have into the Q&A, and we'll be checking that out throughout this, but we'll have Jean-Luc from Neptune, and then he'll pass it over to Shane from Attune to talk a little bit more about commercial flood.
Awesome. Thanks, Maggie. Appreciate that. And thanks all for taking the quick survey. And glad to know that we have some people who are familiar with Neptune and then also some that may not be so familiar with Neptune. Hope to answer any and all questions you may have as we go through this. Please feel free to leverage the chat feature, unmute, jump in, ask questions, and happy to answer those live or certainly any question that follows or comes to your mind after this, please reach out to the Attune team or to myself. We're happy to help. Figured we would jump in a little bit about Neptune, provide context of who, what, when, where, and why. What are our value props? Show a quick demo of how to navigate from the Attune portal to the Neptune side. Then we'll do a quick Neptune completion of that quote and then the bind process. We'll jump back into a few different slides, mainly around scripts of how to sell if you're not familiar with selling flood insurance and what does that look like. Maybe some segments to think about of how to target your book of business. And then we'll end with some flood facts Q&A at the end here. I don't anticipate going the full hour, but happy to go the full hour if we need it. And so please, again, any questions, topics, please ask those and we'll get those answers to you ASAP. Let's jump in. I'm Jean-Luc Eckstein. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Neptune. I oversee sales and services and work very closely with Shane, Maggie, and the Attune management team. And so very grateful for the opportunity to talk all things flood with you today. I'm going to share my screen and provide some context about Neptune. First and foremost, Neptune has now been around 6 years, and in those 6 years, we've become the largest private flood insurance company in the United States. We have about 175,000 clients. We add about 1,000 clients a week. And we have grown to be in 49 states plus the District of Columbia for all of our product types. So that's commercial, RCBAP, and personal. The only state we're not in is Alaska. The most recent state we went into was a month ago, and that was Kentucky. We are 100% excess and surplus lines. We take care of everything once you bind it. There is no further requirement needed on your side once you bind. We, as I just mentioned, we do offer all product types that the NFIP does. So we offer commercial, RC BAP, and residential. RC BAP being condominium association policies. Neptune is an MGU, so we're an underwriter. We have no human underwriters. The technology is instantaneously underwriting every risk that you quote within our system. And we then place those risks with our carrier partners, AXA, Transverse, and Lloyd's. And so we've navigated 6 successful hurricane seasons, and we are entering our 7th. And so looking forward to that. Neptune is going to market with 2 value props. The first being, we want to make it easy to buy and sell flood insurance. At minimum, all we need is the address, and we're off to the races for a discovery price quote for you within seconds. We do offer 98% property availability across the United States. Where you may not run into availability are coastal barrier islands, South Padre Island, Fire Island, and in the state of Louisiana, anything south really of New Orleans, we have a more constricted elevation requirement. So that's where you may run into that. All to say, all we need is minimum is an address. With the API integration into Attune, you're really enabled to now sell 2 to 3x flood insurance by offering it every time, both at new business, but then also at renewal. Again, once you bind it, our system is a bind it and forget it type system. You bind it, our system situational aware, we will chase after anything that is outstanding, whether that be with a lender, with an insured, or whomever. We will follow up in certain requirements, in certain timetables with email and or paper mail. Our second value prop is that we offer broader coverage and higher limits. So an example on the commercial form, we go up to 4 million in coverage A, whereas the NFIP only goes up to 500,000. In addition to that, we offer 8 high-value optional coverages. Quite a few of those are also on the commercial side. For the commercial Main Street mercantile form, the general property form, we have replacement cost of contents, and new to it is the replacement cost on the building, excuse me. And we also have business interruption. I'll explain more of both of those when we get into the demo here. All to say, both of those value props have helped to propel Neptune to become the largest private flood carrier in the country. Here's a quick visual of policies that we have, and you can see where we write. We just opened up in Kentucky, and we've already seen a significant volume in quotes and binds occurring there. This next slide here is just showing a quick comparison of the general property form of that of Neptune compared to the NFIP. The differences here, again, we offer business interruption and replacement cost of building, which are 2 optional coverages not offered by the NFIP. And then the last column that I wanted to highlight here, the last row that I wanted to highlight here is the waiting period. We do have a standard 10-day wait period compared to the 30-day wait period of the NFIP, and that can be waived for 2 reasons. One is it's tied to a real estate transaction, including cash. And 2, it could be a rollover that you're working with a customer that already has a flood policy. And let's say that flood policy expires this Friday, February 16th. You could then have the Neptune policy start Friday, February 16th to ensure that there's no lapse in coverage. So those are the 2 reasons. I'm going to pause there, see if there are any questions that have come in those quick slides I just went through. And if not, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Shane, I'll hand it over to you to begin the demo from the Attune portal.
Perfect. Thank you, Jean-Luc. It looks like one question did come in. I'm not sure if you're able to see it.
Do you allow grandfathering of policies from one client to another, prior owner? The short answer, Kevin, is yes, we do allow this. However, we've in the past, this type of situation we've realized can become messy quickly on who deserves money or any refund based on being a seller or a buyer. And so the short answer is we still allow this. However, we now require both the seller and the buyer to sign an affidavit, basically relinquishing, in this case, Attune and Neptune from any dispute in money. The policy will carry over, and the new owner of that policy will then be charged the renewal, but also if they cancel for a valid reason, the refund will go to them, and that's who is the reflective of the policy.
Awesome.
We also have a raised hand from Alexandrine. Alexandrine, do you have a question you'd like to ask? No? Guess not. Okay.
It might be the new feature where if you raise your hand, it raises the hand on it as well. Feel free to use the chat or the Q&A if a question does come up, Alex. But thank you for that, Jean-Luc. My name is Shane Corcoran. I'm the carrier partnership lead here at Attune. So I oversee the Neptune relationship from the Attune side. And it's great to see so many people attend, both who are familiar with Neptune and those who are new. Hopefully after this, everyone leaves an expert and is ready to sell some flood. Let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. Did it come through okay?
Yes.
Awesome. Perfect. So as Jean-Luc mentioned, we try to make this as fast and easy as possible. And with the API that we've built, it really takes minutes to complete a quote. Before I get into the start of that, I kind of want to walk folks through the Attune portal itself. When you log in, this is what you'll see. One thing that I always like to highlight before getting into the actual quote is this support tab here on the left. If you go there and click Neptune Flood Underwriting Guidelines, you'll be able to download those and reference them at any time. It's really that simple. Show here. And this will bring you into the guidelines with the full facts about Neptune. Maybe you're not as familiar about flood. This will give you everything you need to feel equipped to actually sell to the insured. I always like to call that out. I know I actually was a broker at one time, and I had many guidelines all over the place. So from there, I'd like to show folks how to actually get into the Neptune quote. It's really as simple as an address, as Jean-Luc mentioned. What you'll need to do is go to the accounts, create a new client. I'm going to call this Shane's flood test. And then enter in an address here. This. Select the classification of business. This is not needed for flood. As many may know, this is to show eligibility for our other products, as you'll see. So by creating the address, you'll see all the products that are available to you on our shelf. And if you scroll down, you will find the Neptune flood insurance right here. This will allow you to get a quote and bring you right to the Neptune portal. Another feature that we have that's very cool is, say you start off with a business owner's policy and you're trying to do a full package for the insured. You can go through the BOP flow. I won't complete it for the sake of time of this webinar, but what you'll do is by starting a quote or completing a quote, just from that address, the Attune system will automatically ping the Neptune through API, and we'll show you an indication of what the flood policy could be, and also show the level of risk that the insured has due to flood. From there, it's as simple as clicking Visit Neptune. We'll show you a few more tips that are useful to know as you're selling the policy. Click Go to Quote, and this will bring you right into the Neptune system to complete the quote. One thing I'd like to call out is that our system is only set up for commercial policies at the moment through the Attune API, but that doesn't mean that you can't sell residential as well. So if you were to enter in a residential address when creating an account, you would follow the same flow and you would land at the same position in the Neptune portal. It will be on the commercial product, but to get to the residential product, all you need to do is click on the top left corner, and this will bring you back to the home page. And then you can enter in that same address. Oh, there we go. It'll show the address here. It's an In-N-Out restaurant, and this will bring you to all the products that Neptune offers. So you have full access to their entire shelf through Attune as well, but our API is set up for commercial to start. I like to call that out so folks don't accidentally quote a home on a commercial product, and it's not as easy as it should be. But with that, I will pause and pass it back to Jean-Luc to go through the Neptune side of the flow.
Shane's got a couple questions in the Q&A if you'd like to check those out.
Oh, perfect. For commercial floods, can they be written in a client's personal name? From Kevin.
Yes.
Jean, I see you. Yes, thank you for that.
They can be written in the personal name. They can be written in the business name. They can also be written in an LLC.
And then Denise, I see your question that you tried to quote a commercial flood and received a notice that the address may be ineligible for coverage. Is this unusual or pretty standard? This is a standard if it depending on the flood zone. I would have to know exactly the location you were trying to quote. Jean-Luc, I'm not sure if that.
Yeah, I would say if you could send over, or whether it's a direct message or an email, send the address to the property. I can take a look at it. Generally, with a commercial policy that's showing as ineligible from a Neptune perspective, the likely scenario could be it's just an underwriting guide ineligibility. So for commercial buildings, we don't do anything over 100,000 square feet, so that could have hit that limit. Or it could be down to the elevation of the property. In most of the United States, we go down to -6. And so if it was, more negatively elevated than that, then that would also be a decline. But I'm happy to take a look at it and verify and come back to you. And I'll reply with my email address here.
Yeah, Denise, the Attune portal is set up to catch those things. But if anything comes up like that, feel free to reach out to Jean-Luc or the help@attuneinsurance.com email address. Or if you click on the support tab here on the bottom right, this will actually bring you to a live chat function. And feel free to chat in there as well. And we're happy to double check anything for you as you go through.
And Shane, can you show again where the guideline section is here on your portal?
Absolutely. I actually love this question. I'm glad I showed it to start. Alma, it is on the left-hand side with support with the little, I call it life preserver type function. If you click that, that will bring you to the guidelines for all products that you can download.
And then I will answer this next question once I share screens about the elevation certificate.
Perfect. I will stop sharing mine.
Cool.
Great questions, everyone. And at the end of this, if you'd like to see the flow again, I'm happy to go through. I know that was relatively quick, but we built it easy, like I said.
Awesome. So once you have quoted that property in the Attune portal, you click Neptune, you bridge over. This is the experience then that you will then be landed on. So now you're, in the Neptune portal, and at the high level, all the details that you've entered in have come over to us. And again, it's the discovery price. There's items here for you to review and potentially even update depending on the scenario for that particular customer or named insured. But starting here at the very top here in the map, you have an aerial view of the property with the red pin over it. And within that map, you have 2 third-party links here. If you need to go out to them, specifically the Google link to see maybe characteristics of the building to confirm or possibly update, that's there for you as a resource, a quick resource. Right below that, you have the quote number. Quote numbers always start with the abbreviation of the state. Our quotes are always valid for 60 days from the creation date. You can bind up to 90 days in advance. Right below that is our inception date. Again, we default to 10 days in advance for our standard 10-day wait period. They can be waived for one of 2 ways. You just hover over this section and toggle on immediate coverage, and then select the date that is necessary. I'm going to pretend that this policy will need to start on Friday the 16th because it needs to align with an expiring flood policy. Following that, you could go ahead and enter in your name as the producer. And then you come down to our 2 eligibility questions. I'm on the general property form, so this is automatically defaulted to no. This should not be for residential use. And then the second one is any prior flood losses. We do not allow for repetitive flood loss properties. We do allow for 1 loss, so long as that 1 loss was under $25,000. This, if you answer yes, and then you answer yes, there has been 1 loss, but more than 25 or more than 1 loss, will immediately stop you here, as this is an ineligible property with Neptune. We will not waste your time. We will stop you at that moment, and you then can choose or find an alternative flood market to provide coverage for that property. if this is to the best knowledge of the insured relative to the property that they're trying to get coverage for. If the property was built and they're the first owner of the building or the first tenant of the building, then that is, or if they're the first homeowner, then that question is valid for the entirety of the time that they've been tied to that property. But let's say that property was built 20 years ago and they've only moved in or owned it for the last 5 years, then that, and they have no disclosure stating a flood has occurred in the prior 15 years, then this question would only be applicable for the 5 years that they've been directly involved with that property. Next here, you come to property information. We pull in your built, square feet, flood zone, etc. All of these fields are able to be updated in case, maybe there's been a material renovation or a new build is going up this year that has yet to be digitized, and you can then update 1973 to 2024 if necessary. Here, I think it was Keo that was asking about elevation certificates. Neptune will never require an elevation certificate. However, if you have one, you're more than welcome to enter in the lower of C2A or C2E to the second decimal. If it improves the premium, great, leave it in. If it keeps it the same, up to you if you want to keep it in or take it out. And if it, in the rare instances, it has an adverse impact to the premium by increasing it, you can revert and take out the EC just by selecting no. The premium will then recalculate without the elevation certificate back to what it originally was, and then you can move forward. If you do use an elevation certificate, our ask is that within 30 days post inception that you upload that elevation certificate to the policy within our system. Next, we default the next 3 questions for you to review and verify what type of construction is this. I'm going to go ahead and select masonry. It's a building that I do own, and it is a slab on grade. But if you hover over any of the foundation selections here, there's image carousels that appear, and you can see what type of image we're after. We follow the NFIP, and the NFIP uses personal lines images, and so that's where we are, just to keep it, if you're familiar with the NFIP, just to keep it familiar, and that's why those images are there for a commercial general property form. Following that, you get to the coverage section. So here, if you wanted to go ahead and increase this to 500,000, it'll recalculate real quickly and go from $839 to $1,000 for $500,000 in coverage A. We default to a $5,000 deductible, and then we now have our optional coverages here. We used to only offer $25,000 limit. We now go up to a $50,000 limit for the business interruption. So if you simply select either or. If you hover over the information icon here, it'll give you a little bit more detail on what this actually means and for the insured. And then our newest optional coverage is replacement cost on the building. All commercial properties, all general property forms are settled at ACV. And so if they want replacement cost on the building, you can simply go ahead and toggle this yes, and then that will be replacement cost. The NFIP does not offer this. The other optional coverage that we have for a commercial type form is for apartments. We have a $500,000 loss of use optional coverage, so loss of rents in the event of a flood. That's not on this form because it's a standard general property, but if you were to select apartments in that tile form by restarting a new quote, that's where you can find that. Finally, you can come to the named insured information. Go ahead, enter. Goodness. Enter in the named insured information. If there's a secondary context, go ahead and enter that in. And then if there's a lien holder, you can go ahead and add that lien holder here up to 3. Shane, or Maggie, I'll pause here. I think I see some questions may have come in. Anything you want me to cover before I go on?
There are a few that came through. Let me see here. Isella, oh, I apologize if there's an echo. Are we notified if the client does not sign the required documents?
We do send out notification with the system situationally aware. So once you bind this policy, we will then send an email to the named insured on that email on file, so make sure that this email here is for the named insured. We will send an email to that address with a single sign-on link for them to then log into the system. Once they log in, they will be prompted to go ahead and sign and or pay if it was billed to insured. If they do not, maybe because we also allow them to bypass that, and we'll send follow-up notifications, right? So if they don't do it immediately, for one reason or another, we then send follow-up notices. We then ask you, especially if payment is still pending, we'll send notice to the agent, hey, this policy is due to void shortly. Please help us obtain payment for this policy. That's in the new task feature we have, but we also do send emails out to the agent of record on that policy.
Jean-Luc, actually, do you mind if I take over sharing my screen? I can show them how to get to the task function from Attune.
Sure.
Share my screen once more. All right. And to get to the task function is actually very easy. It's just a slight difference in the flow. So what you do is you visit Neptune, and if you click see all quotes or policies, this will again bring you back to the Neptune portal, but it will land you on a different page of the portal.
Scroll up.
I think my computer is being a bit slow. So apologies for that. I'm not sure what's happening on my side, but I still have the other tab open. What it will do is it will land you on this section. And then from there, it's the tasks right here. And this will allow you to track who still has open action items.
Yeah, and that's a great call out. So when you're there, policies will appear. We've prioritized it based on payment that is due on policies and when they are relative to when they're set to void for non-payment. And in the left-hand modal there, you have different task types. You can see who, you'll be able to slice and dice this to get to a confined list if you would like. This is version 1. We're working on version 2, adding a date selector. Oh, show me all my tasks within this date frame, and a few other options. So if you are using this and have any thoughts on, version 2, version 3, please let me know. What else?
See here.
Yes, the losses follow the property, not necessarily the insured. But it's up to the insured's best understanding of whether a flood has impacted that particular property. Does your form have co-insurance? On commercial, no. On RC BAP, yes. So how long do we have to get the needed documents for binding a flood policy? So if there's any supporting documentation that is needed, whether that be, you've waived the 10-day wait period for a closing, you've used an elevation certificate value, any of those type of documents, you have 30 days post inception to upload those to the policy. In the event, some reason, a flood occurs prior to you uploading those documents, and that first notice loss comes in and we notice that we don't have those, then we'll proactively reach out to you to get them ASAP so that flood claim can continue. How do we get elevation reports? Those are generally, Neptune does not provide elevation certificates or the surveys for elevation certificates, but the insureds are likely to have those, and if they don't, they then could order one from their local surveyor. I would say if they don't have one and would like to order one, be mindful that, those could cost $300, $400, $500, $600. So just be mindful of that cost there. In Colorado, from a private flood standpoint, meaning Neptune, there is no training requirement in order to sell flood. The NFIP more broadly has training that is required to sell flood for agents. The only call out to Colorado is that they do require an agent to sign a form when selling excess and surplus lines, an acknowledgement form that this is an excess and surplus lines product, not necessarily an admitted product. That said, the NFIP is not admitted. They're classified as other. They're a government entity. Cool. I will reshare my screen. All right. Two things here that I want to call out before we go to bind. The first is if you want to view or email the quote, you can go ahead and click this. Again, the email that you entered in for the first contact will populate here. This is a field that you can edit. You can delete this, add your own email, whatever you would like. You then, if you decide to send this email to the named insured, they will get a copy of the quote with all the different details and a link where they can self-fulfill under your code. So said another way, you can send this to them. They can say, oh yeah, this looks good. I'm going to go ahead and buy this. They can pay for it online. And you then would get an email saying this policy was bound under your code. You're the agent of record and you get the commission, just as if you were to bind it in the Neptune policy portal here. Alternatively, you could just take this and download the quote and send it out. The first page here will be just, again, the details you've selected in the quoting process. I'm logged in as Neptune, so that's why you see this here. But when you're under your code, your information will populate here. And then the second page is just highlighting that Neptune meets the definition of private flood insurance. Lenders are generally the one looking for this. This is also listed on our policy documentation, but just wanted to call that out there. The second thing I want to highlight here is the send rejection email. So say you've offered flood to the client. For one reason or another, the client has decided to politely decline the coverage of flood in order to protect your E&O and possibly save an opportunity. You can send a rejection email to them. This is basically saying, hi, I offer you, my customer, flood insurance. You are declining it against my recommendation or suggestion. And so can you please sign this rejection form? When we send this rejection form to them, we give them an off-ramp, I've changed my mind button. Again, they can do one of two things. They can self-fulfill that quote that you've already created for them. Again, they can bind online themselves. You get an email notifying you that a policy was bound under your code. Or they still can change their mind, but your contact information will be listed there, and then they can call you back and say, no, I've changed my mind. I would like to work through this with you. Could you bind this for me? We see that when agents are using this regularly, we see that named insureds change their mind about 10 to 11% of the time. So it is meaningful. We do keep all record of this. We keep record when it's sent. We keep record of which ones have been signed, and then we keep all of those signed ones on record for you if you ever need them in the future. Okay, so once you've made sure that the inception date is set to the correct date, all the characteristics are correct and the limits are right, you can go ahead and click bind. Once you bind, you will then be prompted to sign as the agent. You will know that you're signing as the agent here at the top. It'll tell you that. The first attestation here is that you're signing to acknowledge the waiting period, that there is a 10-day wait period, or that it's being waived for one of the two applicable reasons. The second one here is just an attestation saying that everything you've entered is correct to the best of your knowledge. And once you sign those two things, you will continue. And you'll come to the payment wizard. We do not require payment at time of bind. However, if you're working over the phone with your customer and they have the ACH details or the credit card details ready to go, you're more than welcome to go ahead and enter that in over the phone with them. Otherwise, you can bypass this. Again, our system is aware. It'll know who to reach out to then bill. If you happen to be working with them over the phone, we do allow for ACH. There's a standard $3.50 fee. We do the math for you here prior to you having to click bind. If you do credit card, depending on the card type, there's a different percent of convenience fee. It blends to about 3%. So on a larger premium, that convenience fee can become hefty, but some people still prefer the points, and so they're okay with that. Once we identify what type of card it is, you'll see that similar math equation down here showing you what the final total amount charged will be. And then the final payment option is pay by check. There is no convenience fee for this. We have a standard mail-in address here for USPS, and then for any courier type service, we have the address further down. This is also listed on the invoice. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and hit view policy and bypass pane for this. We'll land on the policy management screen. And there's just a few things I want to highlight here. The first is on the left-hand modal. You'll see the policy number. You'll see a view notifications tab. This is all notifications relative to the policy that we have sent out and to every party applicable to that policy, and by any means. So email, paper mail, etc. All of that will be there, and you can click a view button and it'll show you exactly what was sent and the timestamp of when it was sent. Next is the view timeline. This is just saying, well, what transactions have occurred on this policy? And it tells you, it gives you the timeline of when and what has happened. And then immediately below that, there's a status section here. You can see if the policy, you can see if the policy is paid or not paid and who has signed or not signed. This updates in real time. So as soon as you take action, this little red exclamation will go to a green check mark. Jumping to the middle section here, if you scroll down, you'll see a hyperlink for the invoice here. And then you will also see all of your policy documents. Neptune renders all documentation instantaneously, regardless of signatures and regardless of payment. So if you need the full policy jacket for a reason, come here to download it. If you need the deck page, come here and download it. You have the full deck page right here. That's all I wanted to highlight here on the policy management page. I don't see any questions, so I'm going to jump back to the PowerPoint real quickly, 2-3 more slides. One area that I did want to call out, in case you work with customers that have multiple locations, Neptune provides a white glove service for multi-location SOV opportunities. We generally prefer to have this at 3 buildings or above, but as you can see, in Georgia, we had a 2 policy building opportunity that was worked. How this works is if you have a multi-location SOV, you can send that to us. We will quote that for you under your code and then return back to you the flood zone, the premium, and the quote number for then you to present to your customer. If the customer gives you the green light to bind all of those policies, some of those policies, half of the policies, you let us know. We can bind those for you on your behalf under your code. You are the agent of record and you get the commission as if you were binding them you're on your own. We then provide consolidated documentation for you, deck pages, invoice, et cetera, et cetera. We'll provide that to you so then you can then pass that on to your customer. So this is just highlighting some of the wins that we've had and the size of the opportunities. The largest, which is not on here because I tried to grab as many commercial ones as we could. The largest that we've had that we've ever done was actually on the personal line side, and it was about 1,100 policies that we did for an investor. So we did all the quoting and all the binding and the consolidation of documents. So if you ever have anything like that, please reach out. We're here to help. This is an added service. Again, we're trying to make it easy and take things off your plate. Next, these are some scripts. If you are not familiar with selling flood, you can mention that a business owner's policy does not cover the peril of flood, meaning if there's a flood loss and they only have a BOP policy, it will not provide coverage for flood damage. They do need a separate policy. And so here are some scripts. Shane, Maggie, I'm happy to share this with you. And then if add it to that repository if you would like. Next here, thinking about maybe your own book of business and how you can sell more flood. The reason I mention this is because there's a huge uninsured market. If I were to start at the top level, there are about 120 million properties in the United States. That's personal and commercial buildings, all in, about 120 million. Neptune thinks that 60 million are at moderate to severe risk of flooding. The NFIP, the government, thinks of the 120 million, 14 million properties are at moderate to severe risk of flooding. The government has also openly said that their data is not up to date and wrong. So we think that the actual accurate number, based on what science is saying, is 60 million. all that said, so you have 120 total, Neptune thinks 60 million, NFIP thinks 14 million. The NFIP only has 5 million policies, and Neptune has 175,000 policies. And so you can see that there's a massive underinsured gap in the United States for flood insurance across all product types. One state I wanted to highlight is California. There's been a lot of flooding recently in California in this year with the atmospheric rivers that have occurred there. California, across mostly personal lines, but just to give you a sense, only 2% of property owners in California have a flood policy. So you can target, if you have a book of business within California, see which ones may or may not have flood with you. If they don't have flood with you, that is an opportunity to go ahead and quote through the Attune portal, get a quote for that property for flood, and reach out to that customer and say, hey, thinking of you, with all the recent flooding, I want to make sure you're properly protected. Here's a quote for flood insurance. Let me know if you'd like to discuss this further.
And John, the only thing I'd like to add is that say you already have a BOP policy with us. If you go to that account, the Attune portal will, I know we just showed the new business side, but it will automatically ping the Neptune system and show that level of exposure of the insured and provide that indication. You already kind of know a starting point.
Yep. That's great. Thank you. Yeah, and equally, California has a massive gap in insurance for flood. Florida does as well. There's about a few years ago, 17% of Floridians had a flood policy for their property. Right now, that has declined to about 15%, and that's even in the wake of Hurricane Ian. And so, most of that decline is on the NFIP side. Neptune has seen growth in Florida. Florida's our largest state, and we have the availability to take on tens of thousands of policies in this moment. But wanted to highlight that Florida is literally a peninsula sticking out into the Atlantic and Gulf. It is very important to have a flood conversation with all property owners in Florida. And admittedly, all hurricane exposed states. Now is the time to be having these conversations as we go between today's date through end of May, ramping up for hurricane season. And then, of course, the two pieces that Shane has mentioned, offering flood at new business every time in the BOP package. And again, on renewal, if they don't have flood with you, but they have a BOP there, go back to the Attune portal. It'll reping it instantly for you. And you can then offer it at renewal as well. And another talking point or potential way is maybe offering two options for your customer. One is just a standard coverage A/B policy, and maybe an alternative is A and B plus replacement cost on the building if they happen to own that building. Right, that's a big differentiation for Neptune. The NFIP does not offer such a optional coverage here. Next. Yeah, exactly. And I appreciate that. And we're happy to help with anything you may need or any conversation. Appreciate you sharing that. The final page here, we've covered a lot of this already, so I'm going to quickly skim through this. I'll jump to the number 2 bullet point here. Floods are the #1 natural disaster in the U.S. Floods have occurred from coast to coast, from north to south, south to north over the last even 2-3 years. Nearly every corner of the United States has been impacted by a flood. So certainly continuing to make sure that you're having this as a complementary insurance conversation with your customer, along with BOP or homeowners, whatever you may happen to be selling at that moment, is very important to protect your E&O, but it's also an opportunity for you to have more policies per relationship or per account, and also, of course, earn more commission. Neptune, of our 175,000 clients, about 40% of that is X zone or low risk zones. And then of our daily sales lately, we have seen about 51-52% X zone sales. So there's an immense appetite for people in a lower risk profile to be seeking and obtain flood insurance to make sure that they're properly protected. So just because they're in an X zone doesn't mean that you shouldn't have the conversation. You should absolutely have the conversation, because if not, someone else will, and you may be leaving money on the table. And then finally here, banks must accept Neptune as a valid alternative to the NFIP. So if you have a lender involved somewhere, they must accept Neptune. If you ever get pushback, please let Shane, Maggie, myself know. We'll be sure to share the Federal Reserve Bulletin suggesting otherwise, stipulating otherwise. We then send that or have that lender send it to their legal and compliance team to review. And once they do that, we have never had any further pushback. They then accept the Neptune policy. Here you can see the Neptune's average commercial premium is $3,000 and the average commercial claim is $90,000. Nearly 25% of small business owners do not reopen their doors after a flooding event because they weren't covered for flood insurance. I see something in the chat feature. Question on, can you talk about how claims are handled? Absolutely. So in the event of a flood, that policy holder can contact Neptune directly for their first notices of loss. They may contact you first, and you can do one of two things. You can politely have them come to Neptune, direct them to come to Neptune and file it, or you can file it on their behalf. Once that, and you can file a first notice of loss via phone, email, or through our AI chatbot. The AI chatbot is available 24/7, 365, and about 40% of our first notice of losses are processed through that chatbot. So it's a very intuitive experience, and it's connected into our database through APIs, so it kicks things off automatically. It's also available in Spanish. So if you have a Spanish customer, they're more than welcome to engage that bot in Spanish, and we also have Spanish members on our support team to help. Once that first notice of loss is submitted, our system then runs a quick checklist. We then automatically will send that checklist over to our third-party adjusting firm. They're based out of Orlando, Florida, for them to assign an account manager and an adjuster to then adjudicate that claim. At the same time that we send that checklist to that third-party company, we then send an email to the named insured with you CC'd with a guide to claims, to our claims, a claims guide. It's basically setting the expectations of, here is where we're at, we're acknowledging your claim. These are things to consider if there's active flooding still going, things to also consider, be mindful of your safety, try to, if you're able and it's safe, try to preserve and save as much, more contents or property as you can. And it gives guides or thoughts on how to do that. But it also shows the rest of the experience of the claims. Generally, most claims are settled within two weeks. But of course, there's going to be those one-off scenarios where it may go 3, 4, 5 weeks. And an example of why it may go that long, we're waiting on information from the insured, photos, details of information, or maybe the insured wants a private adjuster to review it as well, and that can all add into that time frame. That guide also sets the expectation that the Neptune policy is a financial contract, and our only obligation is to pay out that amount of money relative to that flood situation, that valid flood claim situation. We say that because we've noticed in the past, prior to stipulating that, a lot of insureds thought Neptune would show up much like ServPro and renovate or remodel their home or business, and that is not the case. We do not show up like ServPro. So I hope that answers the full claims question. If there's anything further, please let me know. Thank you for all the questions. We still have about 10, 11 minutes left. If there are other questions, please jump in or raise your hand. We'll unmute you and answer those live. As a reminder, we are having a Tesla giveaway promotion go on right now in the month of February. If you're not familiar with that, what that means is for every policy bound in the month of February, that gives you an opportunity to be entered into as a raffle for a drawing of a Tesla. So one policy equals one raffle, 20 policies equals 20 raffles. Last year, an Attune agent won the Tesla, and so very excited for this year's promotion. This will be our 4th year doing that, and our 4th Tesla that we give away. Wanted to also talk about renewals. Renewals are automatic. We will issue renewals 75 days in advance. And there'll be a set schedule of when we email and mail out to the insured and or agent. One other thing I want to do, I think I'm still sharing my screen here. Wanted
Yes.
to highlight agent resources. If you come here to agent resources, you have flyers here. So you can see the commercial agent flyer. It gives you ineligibility, it gives you things to know about the product. And then also, if you scroll further down, that guide to claims that I was just referring to is right here. So you can see what that even looks like. You have our full sample policy packets. And then you have some short videos on how-to guides, basically TikTok style. So I just wanted to call that out. And then the final thing I have, and I'll stop talking in case there's any other questions that may have come in, is we are about to launch a new product, and that new product is excess flood. Excess flood will be available on top of NFIP policies, and those insureds who want a Neptune excess policy will be able to also elect to have our optional coverages. In the event of a flood, our optional coverages will respond primary, even though they're part of an excess policy. So it gives a nice wrap. The reason for this is that there are about 2 million policyholders with the NFIP at the moment that are on a glide path to their full risk rating 2.0 price, but it's going to take them years to get there. On the personal line side, it's an 18% statutory limit year-over-year increase. Commercial, it's a 25% statutory limit year-over-year increase. And so it's going to take a long time. So as an example, as a personal lines example, our CEO has an NFIP policy. His original rate was $550. Now it's about $612, and it's going to take him 19 years before he will have his full risk rate of $12,500. Neptune's current price is about $11,000 as a primary policy. So in order to get those optional coverages to give a full wrap and provide a better, comprehensive package, this is where the Neptune excess policy will come into play. And that way you can get the optional coverages to respond as primary. Excess flood policy will be available for all product types, commercial, personal, and RC BAP. Yep. And that will go live soon. We are assuming though, that the NFIP policy is maxed out at the limits. So if it's not, then the insured will cover the difference until that limit of the NFIP, and then we would then jump in for anything thereafter. More communication training will come on excess, but I wanted to highlight that that's coming out.
You've got a question on it in the chat, Jean-Luc.
I just
Yep.
covered that one.
Okay,
Yep. It'll be available for all product types.
there we go. Thanks, Shane.
No problem. Well, I see we are about 7 minutes until the end. I want to thank everyone again for attending and all the great questions. If there's anything you'd like to see again, please let us know. We have the 7 minutes. I'm happy to stay, but I hope everyone feels comfortable and like an expert and is able to go sell flood for the rest of February to maybe win a Tesla. I wish I was eligible for that raffle, but unfortunately I am not. But thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Yes, we will be sharing a copy of the recording afterwards. You'll get that in an email.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks all. Have a good rest of your day.
See you.
Have a great one, everyone.